levels. We also supported the launch of the presidential initiative on the fight against HIV/AIDS and other campaigns promoting healthier lifestyles as part of the fight against non-communicable diseases. In the area of economic empowerment, the UN supports the government's agri-led initiative in the Rwenzori region, which is a presidential transformative intervention that brings together a wide range of stakeholders in a harmonized manner with the overall objective of transforming local government financing to facilitate effective business, as well as inclusive development, reducing poverty, and creating sustainable wealth creation for all. In the same area, the UN has completed successfully the socioeconomic analysis of the impact of COVID-19 on the economy and the most vulnerable, with very robust recommendations on how to address the inefficiencies and build back better its economy. In the area of refugees and migration, we once again acknowledge and thank the people and government of Uganda for being home to more than 1.4 million refugees and asylum seekers, the largest caseload in Africa. Thank you, Uganda. The United Nations has supported refugees and the host communities by providing shelter, food, clean water, medical care as part of the comprehensive refugee response coordinated by your office. But more importantly, right, Honorable Prime Minister, as you saw today, we are also investing in livelihoods and job creation so that the refugees and those communities hosting them can have a dignified life. The United Nations has also supported the government to ensure health and safety against COVID at border entry points by providing personal protective equipment, including the installation of disinfection booths. It is part of our commitment and our support that facilitated the reopening of Entebbe Airport, as well as the safe movement on land borders. On gender equality and women empowerment, the UN system has advanced gender equality and women empowerment in Uganda by supporting relevant laws and policies. In addition, allow me to highlight two initiatives that were launched this year. We are grateful to His Excellency the President for launching the EU-UN Spotlight Initiative on Women's Day, a global campaign to end violence against women and girls, which is working across the country. Earlier this year, we also launched a campaign led by UN Women of Men for Gender Equality. And we really look forward to seeing these men at the front line across every sector of society fighting against discrimination against women. In the area of education, the UN has supported skills development through vocational education to enhance the ability of Ugandans to be gainfully employed. We've also supported to keep children learning at home during COVID-19, and through support to the Ministry of Education and the National Information and Technology Authority, we helped to introduce a free of charge, easy to use digital learning platform known as Colibri, with content approved by the National Curriculum Development Center. And last but not least, youth empowerment. To ensure stronger synergies and complementarities among the various UN youth entities and initiatives, youth ideas are being selected under the 1 Million SDG Solutions Innovation Challenge. Right, Honorable Prime Minister, I want to bring to your attention that this initiative was actually developed by Ugandan youth. They came to your office and to us to help them give visibility, and we are grateful for your cooperation. I invite our partners to support this initiative, and in particular, I want to recognize today UNDP, UNCDF, and UN Women. And in particular, with your permissions, Right Honorable Prime Minister, allow me to recognize UNDP, who today approved $500,000 to some of those who've applied to this initiative. Thank you for your leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have pledged as the United Nations to incorporate youth into our UN offices, to work together with the government to help deploy youth advisors in government ministries, and we have also witnessed the intellect, entrepreneurship, and capacities of the youth. So as I conclude, I would like to highlight the fact that on 9 September this year, in your presence, Very Honorable Prime Minister, His Excellency the President launched the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework 2021-2025. This is our commitment to help implement the third National Development Plan, your National Vision 2040, and support you in attaining the Sustainable Development Goals. We look forward to enhancing coherence, efficiencies, and mutual accountability. I would like to reiterate our continued commitment as the United Nations system in Uganda to support the people and government in Uganda to achieve your development aspirations, but also to help you to sustain peace for Uganda and for the Great Lakes region. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Madame Rosa Marango. She deserves another big hand clap. And for loving Uganda and for loving the UN. We love you too. I now would like to just to recognize, acknowledge the presence here of the team from the SDG Secretariat. Because we're talking about SDGs, but just to acknowledge that in our midst is Dr. Albert Gamujisha, who with the support of the UN system is driving the Secretariat to help us get to the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. You're welcome, Gamujisha. Let me now take this opportunity to invite the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Okero Oriem, to come and give his remarks, and after that, invite the Right Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Okero.
Thank you. My God, what we have to go through these days. The Right Honorable Prime Minister of Uganda, colleague ministers and members of Parliament, Mrs. Bintu Kaita, Assistant Secretary General of the UN, Department of Peace Building, you're most welcome. The United Nations family, distinguished ladies and gentlemen in different capacities. My sole responsibility here is to invite the Right Honorable Prime Minister to make his comments. But let me take this opportunity to congratulate the UN for 75 years since its establishment. One does not appreciate the role of the UN until you are at the receiving end of the UN. The UN plays so many roles, but when one is not informed or does not benefit or not the receiving end of the UN, one can only think that the UN is involved in feeding hungry people, in peacekeeping where there's conflicts, and all those things which one can perceive as negative. But when you hear the list of things that Madame Malango said the UN has done to Uganda here, then I appreciate the depth of what the UN has contributed to the development of this country. So when she says that the UN loves Uganda, is loving Uganda in its true sense. Let me thank the UN for the enormous role it's played in assisting the government of Uganda in these various capacities, in climate change issues, managing the issue of our wetlands, issue of education, women and gender, the enormous population of refugees that we have here, without which, with your assistance, we would not be able to manage. And today, I'm impressed by the number of youth which you have brought here, whom you are assisting to empower and to be models to others out there. When I was young, like one of like these ones here, and in fact, I was a refugee also many years back, and that's why I know how wonderful it is to receive from the UN. When you see a UN vehicle, then you know that they'll bring you some goodies if you're a refugee. But when I was young and in a refugee camp, a young fellow and I was bored, I thought I was a scientist. And I made a vehicle, a car, made of wires, tires cut cut out those old sandals, and the body of the car was made of wire, and the steering rod was made of some stick, and the steering was made of some wires. And we made those vehicles as young people, and we walked for miles driving our cars with brothers and sisters, thinking that we had invented vehicles. Yet we were pushing these things around with our own power and not with the power of petrol. But when I hear these young people today talk about the innovations and ideas, it makes me, what I thought was my discovery, nothing really. I'm really impressed about what they're doing here, and they can be assured that the government of Uganda's support and assistance in all forms and manners in blessing what they're doing, and we will work closely with the UN through our Ministry of Youth and other ministries of education and others to see how we should be part and parcel of the empowering of our youth. With those few words, let me take this opportunity to invite the Right Honorable Prime Minister Rakana Rugunda to make his statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my brother Ndugu Henry, for those remarks. It's even good to know that you were one of the early inventors and innovators, and I'm glad you have recognized these new innovators. So if I may start by recognizing you, Honorable Minister, and the ministers who are here, members of Parliament, Mrs. Bintu Keita, the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, who is visiting us, and you are very welcome. The United Nations Resident Coordinator and the UN family, members of the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of President Yoweri Museveni, let me take this opportunity to congratulate you and the entire UN country team on this occasion when you mark 75 years since the United Nations came into existence. The United Nations has turned 75 years at a time of the greatest challenge of our time. And indeed, that is the COVID-19 pandemic. And the COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating impact on livelihoods of millions of people across the globe. We have seen the health sector nearly reaching a breaking point. We have seen and witnessed schools closed, trade and travel restrictions are being experienced by all of us. Tourism industry is in limbo. Foreign investments and remittances have all been affected, which has put many families back to abject poverty. However, amid this crisis, we remain hopeful that the existing frameworks, such as the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, will be our guiding instruments as we embark on a post-COVID recovery program. We need a framework in which to work in as we recover from this pandemic. This is where the relevance of the United Nations comes in, with its mobilization, advantage, and the ability to rally all development partners to assist the developing countries not only to recover, but also to build resilience to future economic shocks. International cooperation in tax issues and debt relief are some of the interventions the United Nations should champion to facilitate developing countries recover from the economic shock of COVID-19 pandemic. Uganda and the United Nations have had great partnerships in addressing critical challenges to sustainable development. For instance, we have worked closely with the United Nations in implementation of sustainable development goals, addressing the plight of refugees. And my brother Sugudu, you talked about that experience of being a refugee. Many of us can give our various experiences, but the fact that we have gone through these experiences, United Nations and the host countries have played their part and have been able to make us grow and be what we are. It is something that must be recognized and must be appreciated. There has also been the issue of feeding the hungry, education of our children, addressing violence against women and children, mitigation, and this is mitigating the negative impact of climate change among many interventions. Really, the interventions of the UN has been very extensive. And it is not just interventions, but it is also quality interventions in many ways. And at this note, I would like to recognize the World Food Programme for this year having won the Nobel Peace Prize. It really demonstrates that the positive work, the pro-people work of the United Nations agencies is globally and universally recognized. It is my wish that our collaboration is strengthened further so that we make more and more strides in addressing contemporary and future development challenges. The government of Uganda will continue to support the UN country team to execute their mandates. We remain optimistic and supportive of the UN reform process, including reform of the United Nations Security Council, so that we can get the United Nations indeed that we want. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I understand there was a discussion on the role of the youth, and indeed, we experienced the two presentations from the youth, very dynamic young people. And this was on the issue of the discussion of sustainable development goals. We appreciate the support that the United Nations continues to extend to Uganda, particularly to the young people who we have witnessed and to the women. And we had a good example of a refugee lady telling us the experience of how she has been able, with her fellow women, to liberate themselves and are able now to look after themselves and also support the children in school. The third National Development Plan adopted an all-inclusive approach to development, where focus has been given to youth, women, and people with disabilities to fully participate in governance, both at local and central government levels, to ensure that no one is left behind. We fully recognize the role of the youth in development because they play a big role as critical thinkers, change agents, and innovators, among many other roles. needless to say, that critical age of young people where they are great innovators, as many young people, especially in the ICT sector, have demonstrated. I'm glad that our younger generation, our young people in Uganda, are not being left behind. They are playing their role. And by the way, we're expecting even greater innovations from you, the young people. Your brains are at their best in terms of creativity, in terms of thinking, in terms of innovation. I wish to reiterate the government of Uganda's commitment to the 2030 agenda with emphasis of not leaving anybody behind. In addition, we continue to give priority to stronger partnerships, localization of the SDGs, particularly dealing with the negative impact of climate change and of inequality. We look forward to a strengthened and closer working relationship with the United Nations in tackling current as well as future crises. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Prime Minister, for those words of solidarity with the UN and with the work that the UN does in this country and around the world. Now, this is bringing to an end to this session, but allow me, please give the Right Honourable Prime Minister another round of applause. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize some groups here that have been entertaining us. One of them is Crane Performers and Light Performers. And all of them are led by young people. I also would like to recognize the presence of various media houses who are telling this story far and wide about the great work that the UN is doing over the last 75 years. And also thank the various service providers that have made this place look as great as it is. There is a request to heads of UN agencies who are in the room to come up here and take a photo with the Right Honourable Prime Minister and the Minister and the UN bosses here. And then after that, we'll sing the last one stanza of the East African anthem and the Ugandan anthem, and that will be it. So
why don't we sort out the national anthem issues, get a photograph and take off.
Thank you very much for the protocol advice. Please, the East African anthem and Uganda anthem, one stanza each. So heads of UN agencies here and ambassadors, please come here. Actually, let us take this photo from outside.
Guru Nanak barungi
Let's take a photo for
kokashenyereza abandi n'inzira
the UN is serving lunch. Down is
barungi n'abanyizire kurara
lunch in the
kokashenyereza abandi n'inzira n'inzira n'abakurutsi baza bitebe y'abakikuru bacu imigonjo kunarara barungi kokashenyereza abandi n'inzira batumwi kunarara bishimwe kunarara boshomwe barungi yashemira yashemira nyakushemera
Just to announce that we have lunch. So please, you'll get a coupon and we have lunch downstairs in the cafeteria. Thank you.
shemera nirwa rwakasha ibajya iganda twemerirwe twakushemera tukashamba twine byona batuwe tukashamba twine banga twine shozi twine nzira twine nyanja yashemera yashemera shemera yashemera nirwa rwakasha pora pora bakanyanya yakushemera pora nechenda nyamwana ndinodeva notema wenji akushemera kugambe pakatsatika tikaponze nyauchenizire nekushemera umutima kuinga nengoma yashemera yashemera yakushemera yashemera nderukakakasha yashemera yakushemera yashemera nderukakwakasha ijorari wijorare engomijuje ijorare engomijuje nemudekanchungura lyomwe bana bamawe mudekanchungura lyomwe yashemera nderukarwakasha yashemera yashemera yakushemera yashemera nderukarwakasha yashemera yashemera yakushemera yashemera nderukarwakasha ijorari wijorare engomijuje ijorare engomijuje nekudekanchungura lyomwe bana babawe mudekanchungura lyomwe kavandinyeka ijorare engomijuje nivavinya mudekanchungura lyomwe bana babawe mudekanchungura lyomwe ijorare ijorare engomijuje ijorare